Ever feel like you're in this world and everyone's got a different set of like instruction? Like you're the only one who didn't get the memo.
Totally. It's like we're all playing a game, but no one bothered to
Right.
explain the rules,
Okay.
especially in the workplace, right?
Exactly. And in today's globalized world, those rules, they're not just about corporate jargon anymore. It's about navigating different cultures, which, let's be honest, can feel like a minefield sometimes.
Tell me about it. One misstep and boom, you've offended someone, lost a deal, become a meme, who knows?
And that's where, and this is so cool, this whole idea of an intercultural communication consultant comes in. We're going deep on this career path today, folks. What it is, how to even become one, all that good stuff. And to help us unpack all this, we've got our amazing expert ready to drop some serious knowledge.
Happy to be here. It's a fascinating field, really. I mean, think about it. The more globalized the world gets, the more we need folks who can build bridges between cultures.
It's true. So let's just jump right in. What does an intercultural communication consultant, like, what do they actually DO all day?
So imagine this. You're a company, right? You want to expand into, say, Brazil. Great market, lots of potential. But there's a catch. You don't know the culture. How do you do business there? What are the customs? What might accidentally offend someone?
Yeah, you don't want to be that company that sends the wrong kind of gift basket or something like that.
Exactly. That's where our consultant steps in. They're like the cultural whisperers. They'll tell you things like, okay, in Brazil, building personal relationships is super important. So maybe don't launch straight into business talk.
So they're not just translating languages, they're translating cultural contexts.
100%. They're helping you understand the why behind the what. Why is it important to build those relationships?
Right.
What are the values that drive those
It's
customs?
like having a cultural decoder ring.
Exactly. And that can be the difference between success and, well, a very awkward and potentially expensive failure.
That makes a lot of sense. But how do you even get started in this field? It sounds, I don't know, kind of intimidating.
It can feel that way, right?
Yeah.
Where do you even begin? Luckily, we have some awesome resources to guide us.
You mean like RoleCatcher? They're amazing.
Right. Their career guides are like roadmaps. And they have one specifically for intercultural communication consultants, breaking it down from entry level to, the big leagues.
Okay, so let's say you're just starting out, totally green. What kind of work would you actually be doing?
Well, at that stage, it's a lot of learning the ropes. You might be doing research on different cultures,
Yeah.
maybe helping design those cultural sensitivity training programs we hear so much about.
So like building that foundation of knowledge.
Totally. Think of it like an apprenticeship.
Mm.
You're shattering the experts, soaking up their knowledge, starting to build your own toolbox of cultural awareness. A lot of observing, asking questions, that kind of thing.
Makes sense. You got to learn the basics before you can start diffusing those cultural bombs.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
So that's the entry level stuff. But what about the challenges? Like this can't always be smooth sailing, right?
Oh, no way. This is not for the faint of heart. RoleCatcher actually does a great job of outlining some of those challenges, and honestly, it's important to be aware of them, right?
For sure. So spill the tea. What are some of the downsides they highlight?
Well, first off, navigating cultural differences, even with the best intentions, it can be tricky. There's always potential for miscommunication, misunderstandings. What's considered polite in one culture might be a huge insult in another.
Oh, I can only imagine. So you're constantly walking this tightrope trying not to offend anyone.
Exactly. And
Oh.
sometimes, even when you think you're being culturally sensitive, you might still mess up. It takes a certain kind of person to handle that kind of pressure. Someone who's adaptable, comfortable with ambiguity, and who isn't afraid to admit when they're wrong.
It's like you need a PhD in patience and a black belt in diplomacy.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But, for the right person, for someone who thrives in those kind of situations, it can be an incredibly rewarding career. Imagine seeing those aha moments when you've helped bridge a cultural divide, prevented a conflict, or facilitated a successful international collaboration. That's powerful stuff.
It's like you're making the world a better place, one awkward interaction at a time. I love it.
Exactly.
But let's be real, before you can even think about those rewarding moments, you got to get the job right. And that whole job hunting process, ugh, it can feel like a full-time job in itself.
Oh, tell me about it. The applications,
Mhm.
the interviews, the waiting game. It's enough to make anyone want to crawl under a rock.
Seriously. But that's where, and this is why I love RoleCatcher, their tools come in so clutch. Remember that massive database of interview questions we talked about?
Yeah, the one with like 120,000 questions or something crazy like that.
That's the one. It's a game changer.
Seriously.
Hmm.
It's not just the sheer number of questions, it's how they're organized. They're all categorized by industry, by role, even by specific skills. So you can drill down and practice answering questions that are super relevant to intercultural communication consultant roles. No more wasting time on generic stuff.
It's like they've read the interviewer's mind.
Right. It's targeted prep at its finest. And honestly, that kind of preparation can make all the difference in how confident you feel going into an interview.
Confidence is key, especially when you're trying to convince someone you can handle all those cultural complexities. But okay, let's say you've aced the interview. Congrats, by the way. Now what? You need to find those killer opportunities in the first place.
And that's another area where RoleCatcher just nails it.
Okay, I'm all ears. What do they have up their sleeve?
Okay, so picture this. You're on LinkedIn, right? Or maybe, indeed, any job board, really. You're scrolling through endless listings and bam, you see something that catches your eye. Perfect for your skill set, right up your alley.
But then you got to copy the link, email it to yourself, create a bookmark folder that you'll inevitably forget about.
Stop right there. RoleCatcher eliminates that whole messy process with their RoleCatcher.capture plugin. It's genius, really.
Okay, now I need details. How does it work?
So you're browsing job listings, right? You see one you like, you just hit the capture button on your browser toolbar. Boom, done.
Wait, really? That's it?
That's it. It automatically pulls all the important details from the job posting title, company, location, even the whole job description, and saves it directly to your RoleCatcher account.
So it's like a universal save button for jobs.
Exactly. No more lost applications, no more frantic searching through your inbox. Everything's organized in one place, ready for you to review and apply at your convenience.
Okay, that's seriously slick. But even with all the organization in the world, sometimes those job descriptions, let's be honest, they can be brutal. Like trying to decipher a foreign language.
Oh my gosh, yes. It's like they're intentionally trying to confuse you with all the jargon and buzzwords.
Right. And then you're left wondering, do I even qualify for this thing?
Well, say goodbye to those days of uncertainty, my friend, because RoleCatcher has another trick up their sleeve.
Okay, now you're just showing off. What is it this time?
Their job spec analysis feature, it's a game changer. You literally paste the job description into their platform.
What happens next?
Their AI goes to work, analyzing the heck out of that description. It breaks down the key skills the employer is looking for, both those hard skills and those sometimes harder to pin down soft skills.
So it's like having a translator for job postings.
Exactly. And not just any translator, one that can cut through the fluff and tell you exactly what you need to know to stand out.
I'm starting to think RoleCatcher might be run by mind readers. They just seem to know exactly what job seekers need at every step of the process.
Right. And it doesn't stop there. They even have a feature that analyzes your resume against the job description and tells you which version is the strongest match.
Okay, that's next level helpful. It's like having a personal branding consultant in your back pocket.
Right. They're all about empowering you with the information and tools you need to put your best foot forward. Because, let's be real, job hunting is hard enough as it is.
No kidding. So we've talked about how to find the jobs, how to prep for the interviews, but let's get down to brass tacks here. What does it actually take to excel as an intercultural communication consultant? What are those must-have skills?
Well, this might seem obvious, but communication skills are key. And I'm not just talking about being able to speak clearly, although that's definitely important. It's about being an active listener, understanding nonverbal cues, and being able to adapt your communication style to different cultural contexts.
It's like being a cultural chameleon,
Right.
right? Blending in and connecting with people from all walks of life.
Exactly. It's about being able to build rapport with anyone, regardless of their background. And that takes empathy, understanding, and a genuine desire to learn about other cultures.
It's about being a citizen of the world, really. But it's got to be more than just being a good communicator, right?
You're right. It's also about being a problem solver.
Okay, how so?
Think about it. A lot of times, these consultants are brought in to help solve really complex problems that are rooted in cultural differences.
So you're not just smoothing over a few awkward interactions, you're tackling those deep-rooted cultural clashes that can make or break a company's success.
Exactly. You need to be able to think critically, analyze situations from multiple perspectives, and come up with creative solutions that work for everyone involved. It's like being a cultural detective, figuring out the root causes of a conflict and finding a way to bridge that gap.
And probably having a healthy dose of patience and resilience too, right?
Oh, absolutely. This is not a career for the easily discouraged. You're going to face setbacks, misunderstandings, maybe even a few slammed doors. But for those who persevere, who are passionate about building bridges between cultures, it can be an incredibly rewarding and impactful career.
It sounds like it takes a special kind of person. But for those who are up for the challenge, the rewards can be huge. Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, the skills, but let's talk about the impact, right? Because it's one thing to talk about cultural sensitivity, but how does this actually play out in the real world? Like, what difference are these consultants actually making?
Oh, the impact is huge. I mean, think about it. You got these multinational companies, right?
Yeah.
Trying to do business all over the globe. And they're realizing that cultural competency isn't just some nice to have anymore. It's essential.
It's like you can have the best product in the world, but if you don't know how to market it to a specific culture, you're dead in the water.
Exactly. And that's where our intercultural communication gurus come in. They can help a company avoid those cultural blunders that can, let's be honest, go viral for all the wrong reasons.
Oh, yeah. Nothing like a tone-deaf ad campaign to tank your brand reputation overnight.
Right. So they'll help craft marketing campaigns that resonate with a specific audience, taking into account those cultural nuances and sensitivities.
So it's not just about avoiding disaster, it's about actually connecting with people on a deeper level, building trust, establishing those relationships.
Exactly. And that can translate into, increased sales, better customer satisfaction, all of that good stuff.
It's like they're the secret weapon behind those global brands that just seem to get it right everywhere they go.
Exactly. But it goes beyond just marketing, too.
Yeah.
Think about international business negotiations. Those can be incredibly complex.
Oh, I met. Different communication styles, different expectations, different ways of approaching conflict. It's a recipe for disaster if you're not careful.
Exactly. And that's where an intercultural communication consultant can be invaluable. They can help bridge that gap, helping each party understand not just the what, but the why behind each other's positions.
It's like they're deciphering the hidden language of culture, those unspoken rules that can make or break a deal.
Precisely. They can help ensure that everyone feels heard, respected, and that the negotiation proceeds in a way that is culturally sensitive and ultimately more productive.
That's incredible. And it makes you realize how important this kind of expertise is becoming in today's globalized world.
It really is. And it's not just about international business either. Intercultural communication is becoming increasingly important within organizations themselves.
Right, because more and more companies are becoming these melting pots of different cultures and backgrounds.
Exactly. And that diversity is a beautiful thing. It brings so much richness and innovation to the workplace, but it also comes with its own set of challenges, right?
Like what? Give me the lowdown.
Well, you might have misunderstandings, conflicts, even just a general lack of awareness about different cultural norms and expectations.
And that's where, again, our intercultural communication superheroes swoop in to save the day.
You got it. They can help organizations create a more inclusive and welcoming work environment for everyone. They might conduct diversity and inclusion training, help develop culturally sensitive policies, or even just be a resource for employees who are struggling to navigate those cultural differences.
So they're not just bridging cultures between countries, they're bridging cultures within companies themselves. That's amazing.
It really is. And that kind of work can have a ripple effect, creating more understanding and empathy, not just in the workplace, but in society as a whole.
I love that. Okay, so let's say someone is listening to this right now and they're like, this sounds amazing, but I don't know if I'm cut out to be a consultant. What would you say to them?
I'd say that's okay. Not everyone is meant to be a consultant. Yeah. But that doesn't mean you can't still work in a field that aligns with your passion for intercultural communication.
Right, because there are so many different paths you can take. And that's where, drum roll please, RoleCatcher comes in again.
They're like the gift that keeps on giving, right? They have this fantastic tool called the Career Compass.
The Career Compass! Tell me more.
So you go on their website and you input your interests, your skills, your values. And based on your responses, their algorithm generates a personalized list of potential career paths that might be a good fit for you.
So let's say you love learning about different cultures, you're a great communicator, but maybe that whole consultant life feels a bit too intense.
Right, so maybe the Career Compass suggests something like, oh, I don't know, international development.
Okay, yeah, I could see that. Working with NGOs, addressing global issues, that kind of thing.
That's exactly. Or maybe something like public diplomacy, where you're working to build relationships and understanding between countries.
Those are great examples. It's so easy to get tunnel vision when you're focused on one specific job title, but the reality is there are so many different ways to apply your skills and passions in the world.
And speaking of skills, one thing that RoleCatcher really emphasizes is the importance of transferable skills.
Right. Those are the skills you pick up throughout your life, from jobs, volunteering, even hobbies that can be applied to a whole bunch of different roles.
Exactly. And they're especially valuable in a field like intercultural communication, where experience is key. Let's say you volunteered with a refugee resettlement organization.
Okay.
That experience has probably given you incredible communication skills, empathy, a deep understanding of the challenges faced by people from different cultures. Those skills are pure gold in this line of work.
It's like you're already halfway there without even realizing it.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher has a whole section dedicated to helping you identify and articulate those transferable skills. They even have templates for building a portfolio, which can be incredibly valuable in this field.
That's amazing. Okay, so we've talked about alternative career paths, but let's circle back to our intercultural communication consultants for a minute.
Back to our cultural superheroes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that one of the challenges of the job is the potential for conflict.
Oh yeah, conflict is practically guaranteed when you're dealing with different cultural norms and expectations.
So, how do these consultants handle those tricky situations? What's their secret weapon?
Well, for starters, they come prepared. They have a deep understanding of cultural differences and conflict resolution techniques. One concept they use is something called high context versus low context communication styles.
Okay, I've heard those terms thrown around, but to be honest, I'm a little fuzzy on the details. Break it down for me.
Sure, so in high context cultures, like say Japan or China, a lot of the message is implied rather than directly stated. It's about reading between the lines, understanding nonverbal cues, picking up on those subtle nuances of the conversation.
So it's like there's this whole other layer of meaning that you need to be aware of.
Exactly. Whereas in low context cultures like the United States or Germany, communication tends to be more direct, more explicit. People say what they mean and they mean what they say.
Okay, so I can see how those two styles clashing could lead to some major misunderstandings.
Oh, absolutely. But a consultant who understands these different communication styles, they can help prevent those misunderstandings from escalating into conflict. They can act as a cultural broker, helping each party understand where the other is coming from and finding that common ground.
It's like they're bridging that communication gap, helping people speak the same language, even when they're speaking different cultural languages.
Precisely. And it's not just about resolving conflict. It's about building stronger relationships based on mutual understanding and respect.
That's powerful stuff. Okay, so left job outlook for a second. Is this a field that's actually, hiring?
Oh, are you kidding? The demand for intercultural communication experts is exploding. And it's only going to continue to grow as the world becomes more interconnected, more globalized. Companies are realizing that cultural competency isn't optional anymore. It's essential for success.
That's fantastic news for anyone considering this career path. So not only is it personally rewarding, but it's also a smart career move.
You got it. It's a field with tremendous growth potential. But, like any job, it's not all sunshine and roses. RoleCatcher is actually really good about being upfront about the potential downsides of this line of work.
Oh, lay it on me. What are some of the not so glamorous aspects of the job?
Well, for one thing, it can be emotionally demanding.
Okay, in what way?
Well, you're constantly navigating these complex situations, dealing with sensitive cultural issues, and sometimes even facing discrimination or prejudice yourself.
That sounds incredibly challenging. It takes a special kind of person to handle that kind of pressure.
It does, but for those who are passionate about this work, it can be incredibly fulfilling. And that's another thing that RoleCatcher emphasizes, finding a career that aligns with your values, your passions.
Because at the end of the day, it's not just about the paycheck, right? It's about doing work that feels meaningful, that makes a difference.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot where your skills and passions intersect with a real need in the world.
Love that. And it sounds like RoleCatcher has a knack for helping people find that sweet spot.
They really do. They have this other cool tool called the Career Values Assessment.
Okay, another assessment. This better be good.
Oh, it's good. Trust me. So you basically answer a series of questions about, what you value in a job, what's important to you in a career.
Like, do I value creativity? Do I want to work independently? That kind of thing.
Exactly. And based on your answers, it generates a personalized report that highlights your top career values.
So it's like, here's what really matters to you in a job. Now go find it.
Exactly. Because when you're clear on your values, it's so much easier to make decisions about your career path. It's like they're saying, don't just chase a job title. Chase a career that resonates with who you are at your core.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked about some of the emotional demands of the job. What about other challenges? What are some other things that people in this field might struggle with?
Well, one thing that can be tough is the travel.
Oh, right. Because you're dealing with different cultures all over the world, You can't exactly just stay in one place.
Exactly. So depending on your area of focus, you might find yourself hopping on planes every other week to meet with clients or conduct training.
And that can be tough, especially if you thrive on routine or have family commitments.
Totally. It's not a career for the homebody.
Yeah.
And then there's the challenge of, staying up to date. Cultures are constantly evolving, so it's an ongoing learning process. You're always reading, researching, immersing yourself in different cultures to stay ahead of the curve.
It's like you're a student of the world.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
You have to be comfortable with, never quite knowing everything, always being open to learning new things.
Which honestly sounds kind of exciting.
It definitely can be. But it can also be overwhelming, especially for someone who's just starting out.
For sure. It's like drinking from a fire hose of information sometimes.
Exactly. And that's another area where RoleCatcher can be a lifesaver. They have a ton of great content, blog posts, podcasts, interviews with experts in the field that can help you stay informed and inspired.
It's like having a mentor in your pocket, guiding you every step of the way.
Right. And they also have a really active online community where you can connect with other people in the field, share advice, get support, that kind of thing.
That's so important. Having a network of people who understand the unique challenges and rewards of this line of work can make all the difference.
Absolutely. It's a great reminder that you're not alone on this journey.
And speaking of journeys, let's talk about the journey of personal growth that often comes with a career in intercultural communication.
Oh, absolutely. It's something that almost everyone I've talked to in this field mentions.
Like what? What kind of personal growth are we talking about here?
Well, when you're constantly interacting with people from different backgrounds, different perspectives, it forces you to confront your own biases, your own assumptions about the world. It's like you're holding up a mirror to your own cultural conditioning and realizing that there are so many other ways of seeing things.
And that can be uncomfortable.
It can be, but it's also incredibly liberating. It helps you to develop greater empathy, greater compassion for others. You start to see the world through a wider lens.
It sounds like the kind of job that not only changes the way you see the world, but also changes you as a person.
Exactly. And that personal transformation is often what motivates people in this field to keep going, even when the work gets tough.
Because they know they're making a real difference.
Exactly. It's about more than just a paycheck. It's about contributing to something bigger than yourself. It's about building a more just and equitable world.
Beautifully said. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of the amazing aspects of this field, but I want to touch on something that I think is often overlooked, and that's the role of technology in all of this.
Oh, yeah. Technology is playing an increasingly important role in how we communicate across cultures.
Right. Like, we're using video conferencing to collaborate with colleagues on the other side of the world. We're using translation apps to understand different languages. Social media is connecting us with people from all walks of life.
Exactly. And that's incredibly powerful. It's breaking down barriers, creating opportunities for connection and collaboration that didn't exist before. But it's not without its challenges either.
Okay, so what are some of the challenges that technology presents for intercultural communication?
Well, one challenge is the potential for miscommunication and misunderstanding.
Oh, right, because when you're communicating through a screen, you miss out on all those nonverbal cues that help us interpret meaning in face-to-face interactions.
Exactly. A joke that might land perfectly in person could fall flat or even be offensive when it's communicated through text or email. And when you add cultural differences into the mix, the potential for misinterpretation skyrockets.
So what can we do about it? How can we use technology effectively for intercultural communication without accidentally stepping on anyone's toes?
Well, for starters, we need to be more mindful of our communication, especially in the digital space. That means thinking carefully about our words, our tone, and how our message might be interpreted by someone from a different cultural background.
And probably erring on the side of caution, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe avoiding sarcasm or humor that might not translate well across cultures.
Exactly. It's always better to be safe than sorry. And if you're not sure about something, just ask.
Right. There's no shame in asking for clarification, especially when it comes to cultural differences.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to use emojis or other visual cues to help convey your tone and meaning.
Oh yeah, emojis are a lifesaver. They can really help to add that emotional context that can be missing in digital communication.
Totally. But it's not just about being careful about what we say. It's also about being mindful of how we use technology to connect with people from different cultures.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What do you mean by that?
Well, for example, social media can be a great way to learn about different cultures, but it's important to be mindful of the information we're consuming and the accounts we're following. Are we only exposing ourselves to a very narrow view of a particular culture? Are we seeking out diverse voices and perspectives?
That's such an important point. It's so easy to get stuck in our own little echo chambers online.
Exactly. So it's important to be intentional about diversifying our feeds and seeking out content from a wide range of cultural backgrounds.
And not just passively consuming that content either, but actively engaging with it, right?
Okay.
Asking questions, starting conversations, really making an effort to understand different perspectives.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, intercultural communication is all about building bridges of understanding and connection. And technology can be an incredible tool for doing that, but only if we use it thoughtfully and respectfully.
So well said. It's about using technology to amplify diverse voices, to break down stereotypes, to foster greater empathy and understanding between cultures.
Exactly. And that's a mission I think we can all get behind.
Absolutely. Now, before we move on to our final thoughts on this fascinating topic, I wanted to circle back to RoleCatcher for a moment. We've talked about their career guides, their interview prep tools, but they have another feature that I think is pure genius, and that's their network tool.
Oh, yes. The network tool. It's like having a secret weapon in your back pocket.
Okay, you've piqued my interest. Tell me everything.
So, you know how networking is essential in any field, but it's especially important in intercultural communication, where building relationships and trust is paramount.
Absolutely. It's all about who you know, right?
Exactly. But keeping track of all those contacts, remembering to follow up, it can be a lot, especially when you're juggling multiple projects and deadlines. But RoleCatcher's network tool, it takes all the hassle out of networking.
Okay, I'm sold. But how does it actually work? Give me the details.
So it's basically the CRM system for your professional relationships. It allows you to keep track of all your contacts, log your interactions, set reminders to follow up, all in one place.
So it's like having a personal assistant for your network, reminding you to reach out and nurture those connections.
Exactly. But it goes beyond just basic contact management. The network tool also allows you to tag your contacts with relevant keywords.
Keywords. Like what? Give me some examples.
Sure. So let's say you meet someone who's an expert in Japanese business etiquette. You can tag them with keywords like Japan, business etiquette, cross-cultural communication, you name it.
And then what? How does that help?
Well, later on, if you're working on a project that involves, say, Japanese business etiquette, you can just search your network using those keywords.
And boom, you've got a list of all the experts you need right at your fingertips.
Exactly. It's all about leveraging your network strategically and efficiently. And the network tool makes it so easy to do that.
It's like having a superpower, the power of connection.
I love it.
Now, before we move on to our final thoughts, I wanted to touch on a topic that I think is incredibly important, and that's the ethical considerations of intercultural communication.
Yes, ethics. So crucial.
Hmm.
Because it's one thing to be aware of cultural differences, but it's another thing entirely to navigate those differences ethically and responsibly.
Exactly. So let's talk about that. What are some of the ethical dilemmas that might arise in the context of intercultural communication?
Oh, there's so many. But one that comes up a lot is the question of cultural appropriation versus cultural appreciation.
Okay, yes, that's such an important distinction. But it can be tricky to navigate, right? Like, where do you draw the line?
Exactly. It's about striking that balance between respecting and honoring another culture while also avoiding exploiting or misrepresenting that culture for your own gain.
It's about coming from a place of genuine curiosity and respect, right?
Yeah.
Not just trying to capitalize on something that's trendy or exotic.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that context matters. What might be considered appreciation in one context could easily be appropriation in another.
So how do you know? How do you avoid making those kinds of mistakes?
Well, for starters, do your research. Learn about the culture you're engaging with. Talk to people from that culture. Ask questions. And most importantly, be open to feedback. If someone tells you that something you're doing is offensive or inappropriate, listen to them.
Don't get defensive. Be open to learning and growing.
Exactly.
Oh.
Because at the end of the day, intercultural communication is all about building bridges of understanding and respect. And that starts with being humble, being open-minded, and being willing to check our own biases at the door.
So well said. Okay, so we've talked about cultural appropriation versus appreciation. What are some other ethical dilemmas that people should be aware of?
Another big one is the issue of power dynamics. Because often when we're talking about intercultural communication, we're talking about communication between people or groups who hold different levels of power and privilege in society.
Right, so it's not just about cultural differences. It's about how those cultural differences intersect with issues of race, class, gender, and so on.
Exactly. And it's crucial to be aware of our own positionality, our own privilege, and how that might influence our interactions with people from different cultural backgrounds.
So it's not enough to just be aware of someone's cultural background. We also need to be aware of the power dynamics at play and how those might be influencing our communication.
Exactly. And we need to be mindful of how our words and actions might be perceived by someone who comes from a less privileged background.
It's about listening more than we speak, asking questions, and being respectful of different perspectives, even if we don't agree with them.
Absolutely. It's about approaching intercultural communication with humility, empathy, and a genuine desire to learn and grow.
Beautifully said. Now, as we wrap up this incredible conversation, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the future of intercultural communication. What are some of the key trends and challenges that you see shaping the field in the years to come?
Ooh, that's a big question. But I think one trend that's particularly interesting is the growing emphasis on intersectionality in intercultural communication.
Intersectionality, that's the idea that we all have multiple identities, right? And those identities intersect and overlap in complex ways.
Exactly. And it's about understanding that cultural differences don't exist in a vacuum. They're shaped by a whole range of factors, including race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, religion, socioeconomic status, you name it.
So it's not enough to just be aware of someone's cultural background. We need to consider all the other aspects of their identity and how those might be influencing their experiences and perspectives.
Precisely. It's about taking a more holistic and nuanced approach to understanding cultural differences.
And it sounds like technology is going to continue to play a major role in shaping how we communicate across cultures.
Absolutely. We're already seeing how technologies like artificial intelligence and virtual reality are changing the game. We have AI-powered translation tools that are getting more sophisticated all the time,
Yeah.
and virtual reality platforms that allow us to experience different cultures in incredibly immersive ways.
It's mind-blowing, but also a little bit daunting, right? Like, how do we ensure that these technologies are used ethically and responsibly? How do we prevent them from exacerbating existing inequalities?
Those are the million-dollar questions. And I don't think there are any easy answers.
Mm.
But I do think it's a conversation that we need to be having as a society.
Absolutely. We need to be thinking critically about the potential impact of these technologies and working to ensure that they're used to promote greater understanding and connection, not division and inequality.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, this has been an absolutely fascinating conversation. I feel like I've learned so much. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
It's been my pleasure. I always love talking about this stuff.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey into the fascinating world of intercultural communication. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and are feeling inspired to go out and build bridges of understanding in your own communities.
Absolutely.
You know, it's funny, we talk about all these global interactions, but sometimes I think the trickiest cultural differences are the ones we encounter right here at home, like in our own workplaces.
Oh, 100%. It's like you think you've got it all figured out, and then bam,
Yeah.
you accidentally offend a coworker from a different background. It can happen so easily.
It's true. And it makes you realize that intercultural communication, it's not just about these big dramatic interactions, it's about the everyday stuff too. It's about how we communicate with our colleagues, our clients, even our customers.
Exactly. It's about being mindful and respectful of those differences, even when they seem small or insignificant. Because those small things, they can add up over time and create a workplace culture that's either inclusive and welcoming or, the opposite.
Right, because one person's just kidding can be another person's that's incredibly offensive.
Yeah.
And that's where those practical tips, those concrete strategies come in handy.
Absolutely. Because it's one thing to talk about cultural sensitivity in the abstract, but it's another thing entirely to actually put it into practice.
Totally. So let's get practical then. Give me an example. Let's say I'm working on a project with a diverse team, and I have a suggestion for how we can improve things. How do I present my idea in a way that's sensitive to those cultural differences we've been talking about?
Well, first off, ditch the assumption that everyone communicates the same way, right?
Mhm.
Because they don't.
Oh, definitely not. I've learned that the hard way.
So instead of just launching into your suggestion, maybe start by asking some questions. Get a sense of how your colleagues prefer to receive feedback. Are they more direct communicators? Or do they prefer a more subtle approach?
It's like you're reading the room, but you're also reading the culture, right?
Exactly. And remember, those high context and low context communication styles we talked about earlier, those come into play here too. If you're working with colleagues from a high context culture, they might not be comfortable with direct criticism, even if it's constructive. So you might need to find a more indirect way to get your point across.
Okay, that makes sense. So instead of saying, hey, I think this part of the project could be improved, maybe you say something like, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this aspect of the project.
Exactly. You're inviting their input, creating a space for dialogue, rather than just dictating your own ideas. And that can go a long way in building trust and rapport with colleagues from different backgrounds.
It's about approaching the conversation as a collaboration, not a competition. I love that.
And don't underestimate the power of observation. Pay attention to how your colleagues from different cultures communicate with each other. What are their nonverbal cues? How do they approach decision-making? The more you observe, the more you'll start to pick up on those subtle cultural nuances.
So it's like you're becoming a cultural anthropologist in your own workplace.
Exactly. You're constantly observing, analyzing, adapting your own communication style to fit the context.
And being okay with making mistakes along the way, right? Because let's be real, no one's perfect at this.
No, absolutely. We're all going to mess up sometimes. We're going to say the wrong thing, misinterpret a cue, put our foot in our mouths. It's bound to happen.
It's how we handle those mistakes that matters.
100%. If you realize you've said or done something that might have been culturally insensitive, own it. Apologize if necessary. Use it as a learning opportunity.
It's about turning those awkward moments into opportunities for growth and understanding.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, intercultural communication is not about being perfect. It's about being present, being open, and being willing to learn from our mistakes.
Yep.
And that's a journey we can all embark on, no matter where we come from or what we do for a living.
That's a beautiful thought. And I think it perfectly encapsulates what we've been talking about today, that intercultural communication is about so much more than just understanding different cultures. It's about building bridges of understanding, fostering empathy, and creating a more just and equitable world for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the fascinating world of intercultural communication. A huge thank you to our amazing expert for sharing their wisdom and insights with us today.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and are feeling inspired to go out and build those bridges of understanding in your own lives. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep connecting.
See you next time.
Take care.